SpaceX has launched over 600 Falcon rockets. The Merlin engine that powers them has become the most flown liquid rocket engine in commercial spaceflight. It's reliable, it's proven, and it's made SpaceX a fortune. But when it comes to Mars, every single one of those engines is useless. Not underpowered, not outdated, useless. To reach Mars, you need an engine that can do something Merlin was never designed to do. Hold pressure high enough to push 100 tons across 225 million kilometers of deep space. So SpaceX built a new engine. They called it Raptor. You've probably seen a dozen videos breaking down how much thrust Raptor produces. But thrust isn't what makes it extraordinary. What makes it extraordinary is how close it operates to its own limits. The internal pressure alone is enough to crush a military submarine, and the margin between peak performance and a catastrophic failure is razor thin. Getting Raptor to where it is today, running stable at pressures no other engine can survive, took SpaceX nearly 2 decades, billions of dollars, and more explosions than they'd probably like to admit. To understand why, we need to go back to where it all started, with a much smaller company, building a much simpler engine. Back in the early 2000s, SpaceX was a startup running out of a warehouse in California. Elon Musk was funding the entire operation with his PayPal fortune, and burning through it fast. His directive to the engineering team was blunt: build the cheapest, most reliable engine you can. Nothing fancy. Just get to orbit before we run out of money. So here's the basic idea behind any liquid rocket engine. You take 2 liquids, a fuel like kerosene and liquid oxygen, pump them into a chamber, and ignite them. The combustion creates enormous pressure. That pressure escapes through a nozzle, and the force of that exhaust pushing downward is what pushes the rocket up. Push hard enough down, the rocket goes up. For the Merlin, SpaceX picked RP-1 as fuel, basically purified kerosene. Cheap, stable, already liquid at room temperature. The engine runs on what's called an open-cycle gas generator. Here's how that works. A small side chamber burns a bit of propellant just to spin a turbine. That turbine powers the main pumps, which feed fuel and oxygen into the combustion chamber. And the exhaust from that side chamber, it just vents out through a pipe. Think of it like a car with a basic exhaust. The hot gas does its job spinning the turbine, then it's out the pipe. That's energy you'll never get back. A car with a turbocharger, on the other hand, recycles that exhaust to boost performance. The Merlin doesn't have a turbocharger. It just lets that energy go, and it worked. The Merlin 1D produces about 85 tons of thrust, running at a chamber pressure of roughly 97 bar. According to SpaceX's public launch manifest, the Falcon 9 has achieved a mission success rate above 99%. For an engine built to be cheap and simple, that's remarkable. Well, remarkable for getting to orbit. Orbit is about 400 kilometers above Earth's surface. Mars is 225 million kilometers away. That's not a harder version of the same trip. That's a completely different engineering problem. And for that problem, the Merlin reaches its limit. Here's the engineering limit. In an open cycle, the higher you push the chamber pressure, the harder it gets to keep combustion gases from flowing backward, from the main chamber back up into the gas generator. Past a certain point, the system can't go any further. For Merlin, that ceiling sits around 97 bar, and 97 bar doesn't get you to Mars. So, what if you didn't vent that exhaust at all? What if you kept every bit of that energy inside the engine and used it to push the chamber pressure beyond anything ever built? That's exactly what SpaceX decided to do. But first, they had to deal with an ugly side effect. The kerosene that made Merlin so cheap was destroying the engine from the inside. When kerosene burns, it doesn't burn clean. RP1 is a long-chain hydrocarbon, and under high pressure, it leaves behind a residue, carbon soot. In an open cycle like the Merlin, that's manageable. The soot goes out with the exhaust. But in a closed cycle, where the exhaust stays inside the engine, that soot has nowhere to go. Imagine running your car engine, but instead of venting the exhaust out the tailpipe, you loop it all back into the intake. Now imagine that exhaust is full of black, sticky carbon. Within days, your engine would choke. That's exactly what kerosene does to a closed-cycle rocket engine. And SpaceX doesn't just need a closed cycle. They need a reusable closed cycle, an engine that flies, lands, and flies again without being torn apart for cleaning between flights. With kerosene, every reuse means scrubbing carbon deposits from every internal surface. That's not rapid reusability. That's a maintenance nightmare. So SpaceX switched to methane. CH trays, 1 carbon atom, 4 hydrogen atoms. When methane burns, it burns almost completely clean. Near zero residue. If you have a gas stove at home, that blue flame is methane. You can run it all day without cleaning the burner. Same principle, just scaled up about 1,000,000 times. And SpaceX isn't alone in making this bet. Blue Origin chose methane for their BE-4 engine, the one powering the New Glenn rocket. According to Blue Origin's public specifications, the BE-4 is also an oxygen-rich staged combustion design. Meanwhile, ESA is developing a methane engine called Prometheus for Europe's next-generation launcher. 3 different organizations, 3 different designs, all betting on the same fuel. That's not a coincidence. Now, to be fair, methane isn't simple. It has to be stored at -161 degrees Celsius. That means cryogenic tanks, boil-off management, and thermal insulation that kerosene, a room temperature liquid, never needed. But methane has one more advantage that justifies the complexity. You can make it on Mars. The Sabatier reaction combines CO2 from the Martian atmosphere with hydrogen to produce methane and water. A Raptor on Mars could, at least in theory, refuel for the trip home. So now SpaceX has the right fuel. But the engine design that can actually use methane at full efficiency, a full flow staged combustion cycle, was first attempted by the Soviet Union in the 1960s with a prototype called the RD-270. It suffered repeated combustion failures. The program was canceled, and for roughly 50 years, no flight engine ever used that cycle. There's already a proven closed-cycle rocket engine out there. Russia's RD-180, designed by NPO Energomash, has been powering American Atlas V rockets for decades. It runs an oxygen-rich cycle. The oxygen side goes through a pre-burner, but the fuel side doesn't. Powerful and proven. But it's not full flow. Full flow means both streams, fuel and oxidizer, each pass through their own separate pre-burner before entering the main chamber. Everything gets burned twice. Nothing is wasted. No exhaust leaves the system until it exits the nozzle. That's what makes it theoretically the most efficient cycle ever designed. It's also what made it, for roughly 50 years, impossible to build. On the oxygen side, liquid oxygen gets pumped at extreme pressure into a pre-burner, where a small amount of methane is injected and ignited. That superheated oxygen gas spins a turbine, which drives the oxygen pump. Then the hot gas flows straight down into the main combustion chamber, still carrying all its energy. Nothing vented, nothing wasted. The methane side is a mirror image with a twist. Liquid methane first flows through hundreds of tiny channels built into the nozzle walls. At -161 degrees, it absorbs heat from the 500-degree combustion happening just millimeters away, cooling the nozzle from the inside. If that flow stops for even 1 second, the metal melts. By the time the methane reaches its preburner, it's already a hot gas, ready to burn again. When both streams meet in the main chamber, the result is a controlled explosion at 350 bar. Based on figures shared during SpaceX's public Starship updates, the production Raptor 3 sustains this pressure continuously. To put that in context, a military submarine's hull starts to buckle at roughly 70 bar. Raptor runs at 5 times that, except instead of cold seawater, it's containing a 3,500 degree chemical explosion. Every second it fires. And then there's the startup problem. The turbine needs the pump. The pump needs the preburner. The preburner needs the turbine. Everything depends on everything else. And nothing can go first. It's like trying to start a car whose battery only charges when the engine is already running. So Raptor uses an external motor to force spin the turbine for the first few milliseconds, just enough to break the loop and get everything moving. After that, the system sustains itself. But those first milliseconds, zero room for error. If the oxygen and methane flows get even slightly out of sync during ignition, if one arrives a fraction of a second before the other, the preburner doesn't just shut down. It detonates. The margin between a perfect ignition and a catastrophic failure? Milliseconds. So now you have it, the most efficient, highest pressure rocket engine ever mass produced. One Raptor generates roughly 280 tons of thrust from an engine you could fit in a parking space. But to lift a fully loaded Starship off the launch pad, you need 33 of them, all firing at the same time, in perfect sync. One Raptor is an engineering achievement, but SpaceX doesn't need one. They need hundreds. Each Super Heavy booster uses 33 Raptors. Each Starship upper stage uses 6. That's 39 engines per launch stack. And if SpaceX is serious about flying multiple missions per month, they need to produce these engines faster than any rocket engine has ever been manufactured. That's not an engineering problem anymore. That's an industrial one. The first Raptor was a proof of concept. And it worked. It proved that full flow staged combustion wasn't just theory anymore, but it was never designed for a factory floor, hundreds of individual parts, complex manual welds. Each engine took weeks to build. For a system that needs to roll off the line like car engines, that math simply doesn't add up. Raptor 2 was the first fix. SpaceX stripped out components, simplified plumbing, and cut the overall weight by roughly 20%, faster to build, cheaper per unit, but reliability wasn't there yet. During Starship's first integrated flight test in April 2023, multiple Raptor 2 engines shut down before stage separation, and the flight termination system had to destroy the vehicle. Building fast means nothing if the engines don't all fire. Raptor 3 is the answer to all of that. According to SpaceX's official specifications, the nozzle is now an integrated channel design, machined from fewer pieces, with dramatically fewer welds and failure points. The outer jacket was removed entirely. The engine looks almost naked compared to its predecessors. But that simplicity is the point. Fewer parts, fewer things that can break, and faster to produce. And along the way, plenty of things blew up. Engines detonating on test stands. Engines shutting down mid-flight. A full booster lost because a single Raptor misfired at the wrong moment. SpaceX has never hidden these failures. They've live-streamed most of them. That's not recklessness. That's a philosophy. Test early, fail fast, fix what breaks, fly again. As of mid-2026, Raptor 3 is in active production and flight testing. Multiple Starship missions have demonstrated full booster return and controlled upper stage reentry. The engine isn't finished. No engine ever truly is, but it's no longer a prototype, it's a product. And yet, not everyone is convinced that's enough. The most common criticism of Raptor goes something like this. SpaceX has been promising Mars for over a decade. Starship has blown up multiple times. The timeline keeps slipping. And a system that depends on 33 engines firing in perfect sync is, by definition, 33 times more likely to fail than a system that depends on one. These aren't fanboy complaints. These are legitimate engineering concerns. And there's a fair argument that SpaceX chose the hardest possible path. Blue Origin's BE-4 uses oxygen-rich staged combustion, not full flow, and it's a deliberately simpler design. According to EULA's public mission data, the Vulcan Centaur rocket flew its maiden flight in January 2024 with 2 BE-4 engines and succeeded on the first attempt. Sometimes, the simpler path gets there faster. That's a valid position, but here's what the flight data shows. As of mid-2026, Starship has completed multiple consecutive missions, with all 33 Raptors firing successfully through stage separation. The booster has returned to the launch site and been caught by the mechanical arms. These aren't promises on a slide deck. These aren't CGI renders. These are flight-proven results. The gap between impossible and difficult but working has already been crossed. The real remaining question isn't whether Raptor works. It does. The question is whether it can work thousands of times, reliably, cheaply, and fast enough to make Mars economically viable. That hasn't been proven yet. And honestly, anyone who tells you it has, is selling something. At the start of this video, we said something that sounds contradictory. SpaceX built the most successful rocket engine in commercial spaceflight history, and then had to abandon everything they'd learned to build a completely different one. Merlin couldn't get to Mars. That wasn't a failure of engineering. That was a limitation of physics. And Raptor is the answer to that limitation, not a bigger Merlin, not an upgraded Merlin. A fundamentally different machine, one that runs on different fuel at different pressures, using a thermodynamic cycle that no one had ever made work before. Whether it ultimately carries humans to Mars is a question that belongs to the next decade. But the engine that could make it possible already exists. It's sitting in a factory in South Texas right now, waiting for its next flight. If you want to follow what happens next, subscribe to the Cosmic Rush and turn on notifications. We don't do hype, we do the engineering underneath. Thanks for watching.